believe we are live.
Sick. I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm John Douglas. This is my studio here in Atlanta. And we just got done recording Matt on the new Beneath the Hollow EP. Figured we'd give you guys a kit rundown and show you kind of the gear that we've been using. And there's a couple surprises, I guess. Maybe not huge surprises, but just like stuff that maybe not everybody does during their drum session. So maybe we'll kind of go into that. So starting off, we kind of used a hybrid of Matt's stuff and my stuff, drum gear wise. We've got this nice DW Collectors brass.
Black nickel over brass, yeah.
Black nickel over brass. And it had a triple flange hoop on it, but I took the die cast hoop off of one of my other snares and then put it on this for this session because I felt like just tuning stability, I feel like the tone is usually better with die cast hoops, so that's that. The toms are 10, 12, 16, 18, Yamaha Recording Customs, late 80s. I got lucky and found this kit used at a music store for a reasonable price, and they're the best sounding toms I've ever heard.
I absolutely agree, 100%. These toms sounded amazing. Just the clarity, the depth. I couldn't be happier with the tom sound we got on this record.
And you also notice these are fairly deep toms, and they're not way up like you would see in 80s like rock bands, where they're kind of parallel, more like 90 degree angle with the snare. In this case, they're pretty flat, like you might see like a Star Classic kit with shallower toms. And the reason we're able to get away with that is because we're using a Roland kick pad on the kick, and that's something that I think has become a little more common with more of the metal records in the last 10, 20 years. I've been doing it pretty consistently with the faster metal stuff like this. Since 2011, 2012-ish. And if you've never done it before, it's mainly the idea is to reduce the amount of editing that you have to do, because kicks are usually on metal records. It depends on the vibe, but for more of the really fast, super tight, needs to be really close to the grid stuff, the kicks are going to be moved around pretty close to the grid anyway. So it makes sense a lot of times to just focus on the hands and let the kicks be editable separate from the hands. If you have to edit everything together, then every time that you're playing, like, say, 16ths on the kicks, and then you have like a rim shot on the snare, if the kick right after that snare is off, then you have to move everything, including the ring of that snare, and it makes the snare sound horrible usually. So that's one of the benefits of doing it this way, is you get a lot more pure snare tone or tom tone because you don't have to do so many edits. You don't have to have you're not cutting up as many hits. If you think about editing something with 16th notes, theoretically you could be editing every single note, which, if you take away those kicks, instead of editing 16 notes, maybe you're editing 4 instead. So that's kind of the theory. I hope that's semi-clear. It's a hard thing to explain without kind of pulling up Pro Tools and actually demonstrating actual editing, which is a little beyond the scope of this. But anyway, moving on. So cymbals are mostly mats. We swapped out the China after the first song. I think that's the only.
Yep, that's the only one that we swapped out after that because we just weren't getting the attack we were looking for.
Yeah, sometimes the cymbals with the holes in them. I don't know if there's
the trash Chinas, the trash crashes.
They tend to the idea behind it is that you get a shorter sustain if you put a hole in it. But if you're trying to do this, you kind of have to just listen to it in context, and that's what we did. We just tracked it both ways and listened to the different Chinas on the same part and see which one we prefer. At the end of the day, it's just what your ears prefer. But in general, like if you're doing this more sustainy type stuff where in a heavy breakdown and you need that China to ring out, you can't have it just stopping after a beat and a half or whatever.
Right.
So that's really all that was. If we were, we could have moved it over to the left side, but in the end we felt like this other China on the left was fine the way it was. So it ended up matching well. So we just put this Istanbul 18-inch power china instead of whatever was there before.
I had a Mino 18-inch Classics Custom dark trash china
It's a cool
originally.
symbol. It just didn't have the sustain that this other one did, just because of the holes in it.
Right.
So from there, I guess we could talk a little bit about the mic setup and everything. We're using a lot of mics. I think it's 26 in all. So we got, start from the snare. We have 2 snare top mics, and I have one of these crash guard things over it, which is all taped up from the numerous amounts of times that drummers have hit it. And under it, you have a Telefunken M80 and a Rode NT55, which are both very cool mics for snare top. The Rode can handle a lot of transient pressure, a lot of loudness, so it makes it great for this kind of close mic and drums. For toms, I have a bunch of 421s, but I decided not to use them on this because I've been digging these Electro Voice ND46s. They have this little swivel mount thing that makes it really easy to just put it wherever on the kit, and without trying to, I didn't have to ask Matt to move around the cymbals too much to be able to accommodate the mic placement. And with 421s, you can imagine, like even just on this 10-inch, the top of a 421 mic would be like right here. And anytime you hit that crash, it would probably be hitting it. So I would have to either have him move the crash over here or over here. And honestly, I kind of prefer, at least right now, I prefer the sound of these. They just have a little bit more high-end naturally than the 421s do. So it depends on the vibe that you're going for, but that's my thinking behind that. So there's 4 of them on the top, on each tom. And then on the bottom of the toms, we have some bottom mics too, which maybe you haven't seen, maybe you have. It's becoming a little bit more of a commonplace practice because it can add a lot of low end to the tom sound, and a kind of a depth, 3D-ness that you don't really get if you just mic up the tops. There's some, if you can go on the internet and find some cool shootouts of with and without toms and tops and bottoms. But there's a lot of cool records, even back in like the 80s or early 90s, that use tom bottoms and are pretty iconic. I've been doing it for a long time. It's a preference thing. I don't necessarily have to do it. I could always add more EQ to the top mics to get the same or similar effect. And certainly if I had less preamps available, then I would not do it. But in this case, I had the luxury of not having a kick drum right there. Have the slimmer option of the rolling kick pad. So I can actually put these bottom mics and not be obstructing the kick or anything else. So I've got 57 under each of the rack toms, and then I've got D6s under, Audix D6s under the 2 floor toms. And they're mixed about 6-8 dB down from the top mics, and that's usually a fair starting point for blending them. All the cymbals are spot mic'd. So on the splashes, we have Telefunken M60 condenser, pencil condensers. They're also great overhead mics. I usually use them on crashes, but in this case we had a lot of cymbals to cover, so that's what I used it for. The main crashes are being covered by our overhead pair, which is this Rode, and I forget the model name. I want to say NT6, but I'm not sure. And then, let's see, hat, we've got a M201, which is kind of a darker dynamic mic. We have on the stack and on the Chinas, both Chinas and the stack, we have these Audio-Technica ATM 450s, which are great. They're little side address pencil condensers that you can, again, kind of stick anywhere without really obstructing anything. So on those cymbals, I'm miking from the bottom, and then for the crashes, I'm miking from the top, just for isolation purposes. So usually when I mix this kind of stuff, the crashes are not gated at all. They're just kind of, or the overhead mics are not gated at all. They're just kind of going. And then I will go in and manually gate the cymbal spot mic so that they're only playing when he's hitting that particular cymbal. It's a small step, and not everybody does that again, but it's just a way to increase the amount of clarity in drum mix. So from there, let's talk about a little bit about the monitoring situation. We did a few cool things here. I'm using the Behringer, whatever this thing is, Power Play module, and then it's being sent the audio from the kit on the first, 8 channels. So I've got kick, snare, tom, 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 and then the overheads on the first 8 channels of the hearback mixer, so that Matt can dial in a drum mix that is always live. So this is being fed directly from the output of the preamps of those mics. So there's zero latency, and it's just a constant live feed of those mics into here. That way, I'm not. Sometimes if you were tracking drums and you were feeding the drummer signal from the tracks and the DAW itself, you might forget to record enable, and then they can't hear themselves. All that kind of start-stop stuff is, in my mind, counterproductive to having a smooth session. So this is just the way that I found that it tends to work best, is just keep the latency down, keep a constant signal going to their ears of what they're doing. That way they're not, thrown off guard, and they don't have to ask you for extra stuff like, can you turn my drums back on? So from there, the output of that, it's also receiving the stems of the guitar and the vocals and that kind of stuff for playback, and then click and a talkback. So he has control over all of those volumes. The output of that is being sent to this Mackie mixer, which is right next to him, and that's what he's plugging into with his headphones. The main headphone out volume has plenty of volume on it to, blast your ears into oblivion if you so desire. We have the Roland kick pad is going to a DI box here that is so lovingly placed on the side of this music stand, and then it is being split so that the raw kick trigger signal is going to a preamp in there, so that I can get the popcorn sound of that thing and run it into my own trigger plugin, whether it's Trigger or something else. And Matt gets a zero latency. The other side of the DI box goes into the Roland TM2, which is running just a very clicky, clear kick sample, so that you can do fast stuff and really hear the articulations and make sure that you're hitting everything correctly. So yeah, again, zero latency because it's being split after the DI box to the kick or to the TM2, and then the output of the TM2 goes to the Mackie. I'm not getting the output of the TM2. That's just for Matt. And that goes on here to a kick trigger channel, and then the output of the Behringer goes to a separate fader here. So that covers everything that he's hearing. So he has kind of micro control over most of the kit elements, and then the stems, click, talkback on the Behringer, and then he has control over the kick trigger and everything else from the Mackie, as well as the global volume. And then another thing that we did that might be a little bit different for some people is we use this TV that's behind the kit. And it took a little trial and error. There was some resistance at first to using this technique. He didn't think he needed it, or didn't think it would help, but we tried it eventually, and it really seemed to work. He kind of took to it pretty quickly.
Changed my whole outlook on learning new parts and just the capabilities of getting things down and writing cooler parts and really getting outside of the box and leveling up my drum playing. So
yeah, I mean, I tried to I'm recording all drummers from all different backgrounds, and there's lots of different ways to approach things, whether you're doing long takes or doing a couple bars at a time, whether you're improvising or sight reading or trying to match MIDI programming or just coming up with it on the fly. I'm trying to accommodate a variety of different approaches to the instrument. You never know what I'm going to get on a day-to-day basis when you haven't met somebody before. So this has been one of the more effective ways that I've found, especially when there's a lot of drum programming going on beforehand, and you really want to capture some of those details. Because a lot of time what happened is the guitarist will, for better or worse, put a lot of time into programming drums. and then drum tracking happens, and the drummer doesn't play any of that stuff, or plays the snare in the right place, but everything else is kind of slightly different. And then the guitarist gets bummed out because they hear all this stuff that's not happening. So this is kind of a good way to compromise. I've done this on a few records before, and I think, from my feeling, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like maybe some of your resistance at first was you thought you might have to like actually read music or something like that.
Right, yeah, which I have no background in, so.
And this is just like, I don't know if you can see it from there, but it's just, I'm just mirroring the Pro Tools window from inside my control room to here. And the top half of the screen is the track so I can see what I'm recording. The bottom half is the MIDI editor, so that I can just have the MIDI scrolling by, and Matt can always see where he is in the song. Even if you don't know exactly what the note on the dots on a specific note in the MIDI editor is supposed to represent. You don't know if it's supposed to be a right crash, a left crash, or whatever. You can kind of get the vibe.
Right. After running through it a couple times, you kind of put together what you're hearing to what's coming up on the screen, so it's just kind of like starts becoming natural after a while.
It's a little more like Guitar Hero or something, where you're just trying to match what's happening on the screen.
Right, in real time.
Yeah, and obviously you can't do that once you're live, or like when you're playing live. But for the studio, it's a pretty great way to bridge that gap of, if you haven't been playing the songs live, like note for note,
right,
before coming to the studio, then this is a pretty easy way to bridge that gap. And now it's on the screensaver. Oh, good call. So yeah, that really helped with the last 3 songs or so.
Great tool to kind of get through some things you might be having trouble with, or things that are out of your element. Trying new styles and things.
Yeah, or if coming up with if you have to write a new fill on the fly.
Right.
Even if you have learned everything else, maybe you need a visual reference just for that one part.
Right.
Because everything's different, and you feel very uncomfortable because it's something very new. So yeah, all those kind of situations it seems to really help with. What else should we talk about?
Well, I didn't really say anything about the pedals. I know a lot of the drummers are, pedal. Everybody's worried about what pedals they're using and stuff. So I'm actually doing something real simple here, like old school, just rocking DW 9000s with the old red Dunmar big wood beaters, and only other thing that's kind of different than like a stock DW pedal would be the drive shaft. Got the Trick upgrade drive shaft, and yeah, that's about it. Just simple, nothing crazy with the springs or anything. Yeah, just simple pedal setup.
Tom is about to fall over because the old vintage legs are just slipping, which happens. I think it happened during the session as well.
They sound fantastic, though.
Yeah, maybe, I guess, another thing I could say is regarding the tuning. I usually do the kind of the drum teching stuff on most of my sessions, unless the drummer feels just like very particular or very comfortable tuning their own drums to a specific thing. And I use the TuneBot to do it. I have like a little note thing on my phone that just has a list of all the tunings that I've used with the TuneBot for different bands, so that if a drummer comes in and I say, okay, we're doing a medium high snare, we're doing the Yamaha toms, it's kind of an up-tempo vibe, I want it to be heavy but not real pingy, and I think of a band that I've already done, and then find that in my list, and then start there. At least I have kind of a baseline of what I've already figured out works. And then just kind of, I don't know, every 10 takes or so, it depends on what you're playing and how much you're playing and how hard you're hitting. But every once in a while, I don't know, 30 minutes or an hour or something like that, I'll come in here and check all the heads, make sure everything is still in tune. Or if I hear something in the control room, then I will come in here and check the tuning. Gives Matt a little break to rest his limbs. Gives me a little break from staring at Pro Tools all day, and I don't know. It's kind of it's a nice thing to be able to do. I would encourage engineers to learn how to tune drums if you don't already know how to tune drums, because it's helps a whole lot once you know. I think it's maybe an underlearned art, an underappreciated art is drum tuning.
Absolutely.
And not to say I'm a master or anything at it, but I have a system that works for me, and
it works damn well.
Yeah, thank you. I think we pulled some pretty cool tones out of it. Matt did a great
Absolutely.
job, and we're gonna film some other stuff, but I think that probably wraps it
I think
up.
that pretty much covers it. The only other thing that I'd really like to add in there is the fact that I am always impressed with Scorpion percussion, but this last batch of sticks that I got right before I came in here, I literally used 4 sticks. None of them even broke. Just some of them kind of got chewed up. That's why I used another pair. So all you drummers out there that are looking for a stick that's durable and going to last you a long time, check out Scorpion percussion for sure.
Oh yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Ian. Sick Drummer Magazine. Love you all. I cannot wait for you guys to hear what we've accomplished down here, and I'm just really excited. So,
Oh yeah, man. Good job.
thank you, brother. Rock and roll.